All right. Good morning, everyone. We're making the transition into afternoon here, Eastern Standard Time. For those of you alumni who are listening in other time zones, good morning. And my name is Bob Francis. I'm your Vice President for University Facilities. And what I have for you is an update on the state of the campus. So this is the state of implementation of the University Master Plan, which is a component of the strategic plan. And I've divided this presentation into two parts. One is to give you some background on the plan. I won't go through it entirely, but I'll give you some background. And then secondly, I'll tell you about all of the exciting things that we have coming up for this fall. September 2013 will be a very busy time. At Drexel, we're opening at least two very large new projects and completing several other significant academic projects at the same time. So we've actually been having discussions about whether we should have an opening crawl, sort of similar to a pub crawl here in September to cover all of the new projects, and we just hope we could complete it in an hour. So let's get right with it. And for those of you who are listening and have access to the chat function, if you want to ask questions at any time, please just type them in to the chat facility, and I'll respond as we go along, and I'll do my best to remember where I was in the presentation as we went along. The cover page gives you Drexel University state of the campus, today's date, April 18th of 2013, and this is the Global Network for Alumni. So my first problem is figuring out how to advance the screen. Okay, and so there are a couple of things coming up. I have to make the master plan advance here. And all of the people just left the room. I see arrows. I see arrows. I hit an arrow and it worked. Okay, folks, we've overcome our first technical difficulty, demonstrating once again that Drexel University is built on technology. Okay, so a couple of questions have already come up. Do you have future projects in the master plan, and what is the phasing on those? So I'll try to address that question. I'll weave the answer in as I go along. What you're looking at on this page is an image of 33rd Street looking north, almost at Market Street. So the Hagerty Library is on your left, and the ever-present cookie truck is in the foreground. So this is the image from the master plan that won a juried award of honor for excellence in planning from the Society of College and University Planners. The other thing that's significant about this project is that we've already implemented this. So this view of the intersection of 33rd and Chestnut has been realized, and this is now what it looks like. It's not the same intersection that you saw just 6 months ago. And this is really significant because when you ask students where the center of the campus is, they'll give you this intersection, 33rd and Market, as being the center of the campus. All right, so we won a national award, but national awards are one thing, and local recognition is quite another thing. And those of you who are familiar with the Philadelphia Inquirer and know about the writing of Inga Saffron know that it's a really big deal to get the Saffron seal of approval. And that's exactly what the Drexel Master Plan received this last year. The review of our master plan was very favorable. And along a number of lines, what I recall her saying in her piece is that despite the fact that we have very large growth plans, this strategic plan calls for a fairly significant expansion in enrollment. And as you'll see as I go through this plan, we have very large expansion plans for the physical campus here in West Philadelphia, but we're at the same time making the campus more compact and uh, and building up in the process. So concentrating the core undergraduate campus at Drexel in a way that it hasn't been concentrated before. You'll hear me talk about density a number of times, and so density is regarded as a good thing in planning now. The world is becoming more dense anyway, and so doing it the right way is important. Over the next 30 years, this master plan is 6 5-year increments. It has a 30-year horizon. We're looking out all the way to the year 2041, which will be the 150th anniversary of Drexel. And in that time, we intend to build at least the equivalent of 6 more Comcast towers right here on the campus. I think probably all of you in the audience know enough about the recent history of downtown Philadelphia to know what the Comcast Tower is. But of course, it's the largest structure in Philadelphia. It's now a 1 million square foot central business district facility. Drexel owns enough land, roughly 14 developable acres, already, and has the zoning permission of right to build this much space, and it will take at least 6.5 million square feet to realize our strategic plan over the next 30 years. And so when you look at that much space, you ask yourself, well, what do we need for classrooms and laboratories and offices, library space, and the traditional things that are known as educational and general space? And the answer to that is that it could be 2 to 2.5 million square feet, perhaps. And so that's only about roughly a fourth of the total need. So 1 out of every 4 square feet we build will be associated with delivering instruction, conducting research, housing the faculty and staff that are necessary to do that, and then providing study space. Another 1 of those 4 square feet is associated with supporting students, housing, student union functions, specialty facilities like arenas, recreation space, all of those kinds of student activity spaces. Again, that's 1 in 4 square feet. And then it takes fully half of the space that you build to support all of the other ancillary things that spring up. As the university grows, the businesses around the university grow, so there are businesses directly related to education and instruction. There are restaurants, there are soft goods suppliers, retailers of other kinds, service industries, and we hope corporate partners who come along on this venture with us, team with our faculty, and take space in the buildings that we build to house their own corporations and to hire our own students as their co-ops. So again, that associated commercial, retail, and hoteling space might add up to as much as 3 or 4 million square feet going forward. So you can see on this diagram what we expect the total build out to be, again, in support of the strategic plan, of which the master plan is just a component. So this is a pretty big undertaking. Looking at the campus as we all know it, looking down, the very simple organizing principle for this master plan is the idea of the comfortable 5-minute walk. So when you look at these 3 concentric circles, you're seeing comfortable 5-minute walks, roughly 1/4 mile in radius. So it's a very simple organizing idea that this entire plan is built around. And that's the notion that you should be able to get almost everywhere you need to go on this campus throughout your day within 5 minutes. And so you see 3 circles, the center one is at what students consider to be the center of campus, which is 33rd and Market Street. But then there's also the traditional center of campus that alumni from the 50s and 60s and maybe the 70s would recognize, which would be the center of the 32nd Street Esplanade. But as of this past fall, we opened the College of Media Arts and Design at 3501 Market Street and 3401 Filbert Street. So now we have a new center to think about, and that is at the western edge of the campus. It wasn't so long ago that the General Services Building at 34th and Market was the Wild West. And if you crossed that street, other than, say, Hess Laboratories, but if you crossed on Market Street, you were into the Science Center and you had left the Drexel campus. This is no longer true. We've spread our wings westward considerably and now own a parking lot that touches 36th Street between Lancaster and Warren. So the campus is definitely moving to the west. These are the three comfortable 5-minute walks. And as you look at the diagram, you notice very quickly that the traditional concentration of student housing at Drexel up around Pelton, it's all colored in yellow. So the residence halls that you remember, Van Rensselaer, Meyer, Towers, Kelly, Race, North, Calhoun, all of those are actually at the far edge of the comfortable 5-minute walk. So if we look at where these concentric circles intersect and ask ourselves where we want to grow and expand, it turns out that we can build a new student neighborhood as well as an intensely mixed use neighborhood that also has retail and other kinds of commercial services in it. In the area that's between 30th Street Station out to 32nd Street and from as far south as Chestnut, where the F-Lot is, the old Abbott's Dairy site, all the way up to the railroad tracks. And then, of course, you know from our master plan that we're even looking at whether it's possible to get enough interest developed to build over the rail yards. We have a study that we're starting with Amtrak, and I'll speak a little bit more about that as we move along in the presentation. But this nicely shaped yellow oval then, which starts as soon as you set foot out the western edge of 30th Street Station and look across the street at One Drexel Plaza, which is the old Bulletin Building. You're looking at what will be the new Drexel. And so this is our area for expansion, and we foresee building about 6 million square feet, as I said, on the order, again, of 6 or 6.5 Comcast towers, all generally in that area. There's another development that will take place up at what is currently the site of the Hess Laboratories. That'll be a large student housing development. But other than that, we are now looking at concentrating all of our work inside this yellow zone. So, I'm looking at a slide that is pretty blank right now. If I'm going to back this up, I think. So if you'll look at, I don't know whether those of you in the audience are looking at a blank screen. Can someone on the chat room type in and let me know whether that screen is blank? I'm getting a message that they're trying to get the content up. Oh, so it's not blank, just the title. Okay, if that's the case, then I'm going to back up to the previous slide and but give the information. So remember the words disposable income and density while we overcome our technical problems. The point is that we know a lot about the neighborhood immediately to the east of the Schuylkill River, and that's the Rittenhouse Square area, and there is a lot about that area that we like, and we especially like the amenities, we like the restaurants, the walkability, we like the safety of the area. We like all of the comforts of urban living that the Rittenhouse Square area provides. We know that there are about 44,000 people per square mile there, and we know that our population density just on the west side of the river is around 27,000 per square mile, so we need to work on that. And we also know that there's a big difference in disposable income. And when you look at Philadelphia between the rivers and in the really successful communities like Rittenhouse Square, like Fishtown, like Northern Liberties, you're looking at places people want to live with a lot of amenities, and they're dense. So it's not that we want to replicate Rittenhouse Square in the core campus in West Philadelphia, but what we want to do is replicate the characteristics that we find between the rivers, particularly in terms of population density and the density of disposable income. When you have enough disposable income in an area, you will also attract the kinds of businesses that people want. So I'm going to move forward. I'm going to skip over the blank screen and hope that, yep, very good. See, we just figure out a way to get through here. So in defining the vision, we have these 7 principal ideas on here. A number of them are physical planning concepts. So the idea of having a very branded campus district as soon as you approach a gateway, as soon as you arrive at a Drexel building, you'll know that it's branded, you'll know that it's innovative, and you'll know that it's progressive in a very urban way. We want to bring the campus to the street, make it safe, walkable, provide lots of interesting things along the street at all hours of the day. Provide shared places both inside and outdoors to draw the Drexel community around, to spawn innovation and to create innovation. And then we get to the last 3 points, which are really pretty important points. One is to invest university resources sparingly. So I have 2 or 3 things to say about that. First is that we have just completed a number of pretty big projects, and they've been built with the proceeds from bonded indebtedness. And of course, we're paying off the bonds. The Integrated Sciences Building, the Urban Center just completed, the Recreation Center, Millennium Hall. All of these projects were built with bonded indebtedness. And you have to take a breather from time to time and rebuild your balance sheet, rebuild your cash balances and other forms of working capital. And so we are in the process of doing that. And while we do that, we have to find a different method for satisfying the need for investment other than selling debt. Of course, private gift giving is a big help, and we see in the LeBeau College of Business, which is under construction and nearly done. Of course, we have a major lead gift owing to the generosity of Ben LeBeau, who has been a major contributor here for years and years. And so that has enabled us to proceed with a project there that we otherwise would not have been able to build. Private gift giving can only sustain a certain amount, and then we need to look in other directions. And what we have discovered over the past few years is that there are private businesses, private partners who are very interested in what we're doing at Drexel and see a chance to fulfill our mission and our goals, our strategic plan, and still realize a suitable economic return for their enterprises. So I'm fond of saying that spending other people's money on our projects is in many ways of greater value than spending our own money. So we have Chestnut Square under construction now. I'll talk about that in a minute. We're getting ready to start Lancaster Square. I'll talk about that in a minute. But these projects are very large projects, $100 million projects, and they're going to be built with other people's money and other people's investments. And why is that important? Because it shows that there is a market grade confidence in what we're doing at Drexel, and that people who are publicly traded corporations, people who have boards of directors and stockholders to answer to, see value in the Drexel brand, see value in what we're doing, and see a return for themselves in this set of interests that work together so well. So that's the point about investing sparingly and relying on the private partners to finance the bulk of the project. And we want to do all of this while at the same time paying careful attention to the residential neighborhoods around us, the summer-winter area, Pelton Village, West Pelton Village, and of course Mantua. These are neighborhoods that in their own ways are under pressures, different pressures depending on the locations, but pressures nonetheless. And of course, we recognize that as the years have gone by, Drexel has contributed to bringing that pressure on, particularly Pelton Village, as we built fairly large residential properties close to Pelton Village. And they have seen their share of owner-occupied housing decline and have seen some threats to their way of life. So we're interested in helping the neighborhoods recover, restoring vitality to the neighborhoods around us. All right, I have something coming up as a screen. The point is that new buildings were designed with very little retail or entertainment, and the architect suggests that in future projects, more detail about retail should be planned to increase safety and branding. Market Street is ideal for that, and every ground floor should have continuous outdoor amenities and retail. So this suggestion comes from Paul Daniel. And Paul, we could not agree with you more. The point is absolutely valid. This is part of the new urbanism that we're trying to practice. Just to run through some of the things that we have done recently, the Integrated Sciences Building was built with a concept in it called Seasons. So we have a retail outlet there. At the intersection of 34th and Market, we've converted the corner space that used to be University Facilities offices into Market 16, which now has grocery items. So that's a 4,700 square foot facility. In the Haggerty Library itself, we've had a Taco Bell Express now for some time. And then running up 34th Street, which we are now considering to be a food and beverage corridor for with Drexel in mind, we have Sabrina's and Spencer's at Ross Commons. That's at Pelton and 34th. Coming back from there, we have built the new dining terrace, which has been open and in operation for 3 years and is doing quite well. And we have under discussion now the idea of building a Center for Jewish Life on 34th Street that would feature a kosher food service for our Jewish students and faculty and staff. So those were the starters, and they're relatively small in impact. But what you'll see coming up, particularly as I get to Chestnut Square, where we have one development along Chestnut Street that has 20,000 square feet of retail, 11 storefronts, 6 of which are going to be food and beverage storefronts, and they're going to be names that all of you will recognize. So we're really trying to do the things that Paul has recommended. Okay, so I'm going to move to the next slide. Thank you all for listening. So we're making the transition now out of the strictly planning part to look at the projects that are in the master plan in the first 5 years, some of which we've just completed and others of which are underway at this point. So the urban center is at 3501 Market Street. The front building, 3501 Market, just opened in September of 2012. This is a fairly famous building in the history of architecture. Drexel acquired the building 3 years ago. It was originally built for the Institute for Scientific Information right around well, it was right around 1980 that the building was finished. Originally, it was a four-story, somewhat uh, unremarkable building designed by Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown in the tradition of what became known at that point as the decorated shed. So this was part of Venturi's vision of the adaptability of architecture. This building quickly became iconic, and when Drexel acquired the structure, we also acquired the stewardship responsibility for taking good care of a facade, especially the Market Street facade, which has become part of the public trust. And so there was a real preservation issue that we, I think, addressed very successfully along Market Street and then along the first column line on the side that you're looking at where the emblem says Urban Center. So we've preserved the way the building looks on the outside, but this is not your mother's ISI building anymore. We used an architect from Minneapolis, Meyer, Shear, and Rockcastle, and they created a vision for the interior of the building that's very different from what was originally 4 floors of cubicle farms that were work cubicles from one side to the other. And so let's just show you a couple of views of what this building has turned into. Some of the images may have been taken just before substantial completion, so if you see things in the images that don't look quite right, that is because they were taken before this opened. But I think I've updated my presentation now to include all slides that were taken after the building opened. This clearly is an image from after the opening because we have a great deal of student work up and on display. But what you will see in the slides now is a very kind of industrial ethic, very clean, sharp lines inside, very contemporary in its character and appeal, and very, very different from the facility we had before. There are 2 or 3 ways of describing this. In the words of the architect, they were trying to create something that had the effect of being inside of a diamond. So when I give discussions about the building, I talk about being inside of a diamond and looking out, which is a kind of an interesting way of thinking about it. A second notion here, as soon as I show you the stairs, it's a little bit like being in an Escher diagram, but actually having the stairs go somewhere, and all the stairs do go somewhere. Oops, my cell phone just rang, so I had to turn it off quickly. I should have silenced it before. It's probably my boss calling me, asking me where I am. So let me get a couple more images of the urban center up for you. Here we go. This gives you a great idea of what the stairs look like and what the skylight looks like, and how some of the levels in the building shift. Now remember, this was a 4-story office building before we built it, but after the slabs were sliced and new levels were added in, we've ended up with a 7-level building, and actually added an additional 16,000 square feet inside the structure alone. So what was just a kind of a drab 4-story building is now a 7-level structure. This is the main architecture studio before moving all the stuff into it, of course. And this is on the west side of the building looking north. The studio is 180 feet from south to north and about 60 feet wide, but it has a beautiful light. And at the very end of the image, although it's a little bit hard to see, we have floor-to-ceiling windows on the 3rd and the 4th floors for all of the design studios, and they have pure north light, which is, of course, what every artist aspires to have. We've done some things with offices here at Drexel recently, which I think are pretty interesting in the industry. We've kind of dematerialized and changed the form of what used to be the traditional faculty office with its four walls and its door that closed and no one could see in and no one could see out. And we have reduced the size fairly dramatically. Most of the offices in the urban center, for example, are around 70 square feet, but we made them very efficient with built-in millwork and shelves and ergonomically designed furniture. And the net effect of it is that in a 70 square foot space, the faculty can do anything that they would have been able to do in larger spaces. And you can see in the image on the right side that we've provided collaboration and conference spaces at various sizes to make up for what might have been perceived as inadequate amount of space inside the office to conduct meetings. So we've gotten a lot more efficient. Those of you in the corporate world know what's happening with space in the corporate world at places like Google or Microsoft, or especially the Cambridge Innovation Center in Boston. The old notion, when I say old notion, it's barely 10 years ago, that you would put 2 to 2.5 employees in 1,000 gross square feet. We quickly got down to 1 employee per 200 square feet, which is 5 per 1,000. And then here at Drexel and in this building, we've managed to achieve a density of about 180 square feet per building occupant, including the students and the faculty. And so that's pretty good. So density applies not just to population concentration and not just to disposable income, but it also applies to buildings in terms of efficiency. And it's important because it makes delivering the educational program better. The distinction between a classroom space and a hallway has been very much blurred so that all parts of a building are usable. And I think I have a couple images from the urban center that really show that. So here's an example. The point is that every interior surface either rolls, it moves, it pivots, it goes away, it changes format, but very little in this building is fixed. Everything in this building, every surface is capable of receiving student work and functioning as crit space, as they call it, for impromptu meetings. And there's an infinite variability here that's absolutely remarkable and makes the college very proud and very efficient. So if there are any questions that, yeah, a note just came up on the screen that the daylighting aspect of it is remarkable. And so I'd like to add to that, you're right. And of course, the daylighting is really made possible by having that very large skylight that runs the full length of the building, 180 feet from north to south. We get great daylighting there. The recreation center that we built and opened 3 years ago features daylight harvesting through light scoops in the roof. And you know, if you've been in the Integrated Sciences building, that we have clear story lighting there that receives and distributes light deep into the space. So this whole notion of daylighting, and it's not just that Drexel's doing it, everybody who's interested in sustainable design and current design is trying to do as much as possible to bring natural daylight deep into spaces, especially buildings that have large floor plates and in other eras were kind of dark and dreary inside. Here's a note: with the open ceilings, I wouldn't want to be the one responsible for keeping it dust free, and there's a smiley face there. And of course you saw all of those open steel beams, and I was in the building when it was receiving its final cleaning, and the workers were lowering themselves in bosun's chairs to clean off the building. So it was a pretty significant problem as we completed construction to really get it deeply cleaned. But with good modern ventilation systems and good particulate trapping systems, it should be less difficult to keep clean in the future. And the building's positively pressurized, so we're not pulling in particulates from the outside. Oh, and well, here's another interesting question. He wonders whether Matheson could have been rehabbed like that instead of being knocked down. So I'll talk about that very point, and I'll talk about what our thought process was with respect to that as I go through the images on the LeBeau College of Business. I said that September of 2013 is going to be a really busy time for us, and this is one of two really major projects that we're opening. The College of Business building is 177,500 square feet. Matheson, by contrast, was 72,000 square feet, so not even half the size, and on the same footprint. So there's a density issue. And then the Matheson had low floor to ceiling heights. We did an economic study of it to see how much of it we could save and how much we could build around it. And after we tried to figure out how to solve for partial demolition and building up around an existing structure, how to make the floors come out level and overcome changes of grade, at the end of the day, when we put the pencils down and looked at the difference in cost, it was about $2 million cheaper to save Matheson than it was to just completely demolish it and start new. So when the economic decision is that close, and when you're dealing with a structure like Matheson that didn't have a great deal of architectural merit and had some pretty significant design issues going forward, we made our decision on that basis. So I just want all of you who are listening that we did look at this issue carefully, and we didn't just knock Matheson down just to make way for this nice new limestone building that takes the place of something that was in the old orange brick palette. Okay, so this is the view from across the street at the foot of Woodland Avenue, which is now Woodland Walk. And so you're looking at the area in the foreground where the statue of Anthony J. Drexel will reside permanently. So these are very recent images. We've got the limestone facade up. This is for those of you who came out of engineering or construction management. We actually applied limestone facing to precast panels here so that you have a really substantial industrial, institutional grade project here. And the limestone is lovely and soaring. This gives you an idea what it looks like. And we're already well into interior fit out, so the project will end up getting totally closed in, and then it will look in its final form within a month. Here's a note: thank goodness you didn't reuse the orange bricks from Matheson. Another smiley face. So I'll make another remark about the orange brick ethic. And when I get into the Chestnut Square project, you're going to see an aerial view of the campus that shows actually how much these new buildings have changed the look. So the presence of the orange brick is not quite as overpowering as it used to be. But the president has asked me to find some ways to mitigate the impact of the old orange brick, and so I'll hold off a minute, but then I'll describe to you a little project that I have underway to kind of reduce the impact of the orange on the eye. So going to the inside of the project, we have some great atriums on this campus now. The Integrated Sciences Building has the largest living wall in North America and the largest living wall at any university in the world now. So that's a 5-story atrium. We have a 4-story atrium in the new urban center, and we're going to have this absolutely cathedral-like soaring atrium in the LeBeau building. You're looking down on the left side of the image from about the 6th floor level. So on the left image at the very top, there is a conference room, and then suspended directly in front of the conference room will be 5 floors of a descending grand staircase. This is going to be absolutely amazing, and people who like to go up in elevators that are glass on the outside and right up in the atriums to the 20th and 25th floors will really enjoy walking down 5 levels of stair here. And then on the right side, you're at the top of the atrium at the 6th floor level, and you're looking out the clear story lighting feature that's designed to bring light into the interior. And then the ceiling in that image on the right has an outdoor deck for faculty on the 7th level. And then right around there, right outside of this image, we will have a green roof for people to look at. So again, other sustainable features that are being designed into the building. Again, opening in September, we will have our classes in the building in September. The original schedule for construction called for a March of 2014 delivery. We're delivering in September of 2013, 8 months ahead of schedule and in true Drexel tradition. Okay, I've moved out now to the intersection of 33rd and Chestnut. We're on the west side of the street, and we're looking east into Center City. And this is kind of a transitional image from the old Drexel as we start to move toward the new. Okay, I'm going to interrupt for a second. A question has just popped up. Is the grand staircase going to be covered in wood? How is it going to look as a finished product? The staircase will have wood trims, I think wood handrails, and then there is quite a bit of wood trim in the atrium in general, as there is some granite trim on the interior, granite and limestone. So you'll get a very warm feeling from that, but it won't be, so to speak, covered in wood. So completely covering something in wood, I think, is probably a design idea that was more current in the 80s than it is right now. So I would say that we're going to have wood features and trim, and you'll definitely have the warmth of the wood, but then you'll have other surfaces built in. Another question, are you able to print the PowerPoint? I think what I'll do is talk to the people afterward, and we'll put the PowerPoint up so that it's available either from a Dropbox or somewhere so that you can download the entire thing yourself. Going back to Chestnut at 33rd, looking east, this is a place where people used to just put the pedal to the metal to speed into Center City at 50 miles an hour, but that is no longer true. The Integrated Sciences building is being completed there on the right side of the image. I'm sorry, the left side. On the right side, however, you're looking at what Drexel used to be with a 51-foot setback from the building line at Crease and McAllister, and so very suburban in feel and not urban in character at all. And then, of course, filling the background is the orange brick ethic from Stratton Hall. Stratton, built in 1955, was the first break away from the main building complex. So you had Main, 1891, Rendell, 1901, Curtis, 1928, and Alumni, 1946, I think. So the first breakaway from the expansion of the main building was to jump across 32nd Street and build Stratton in 1955. And so that started the red brick thing going. So this is what it looks like now. but it won't look this way for very much longer. This is a pretty accurate rendering of what Chestnut Square will look like when it opens in 2013. So if you imagine yourself on the northwest corner of Chestnut and 33rd, looking back at the building, you have two townhouse buildings, the east and the west building, an opening in the center that leads you into the Crease McAllister courtyard, kind of an Italianate palazzo idea, with the entry into the Hans Schumacher Dining Center in the center of the Crease McAllister courtyard. And then in the background, you see the 19-story tower. It's 19 stories and about 175 or 76 feet tall. 869 beds. They leased up in 6 weeks. Sophomores got a little bit of head start on the juniors and seniors, so it's predominantly sophomore housing for that reason, and it helps us get a head start on meeting our sophomore housing requirement that was just implemented last year. So beginning last year, all entering freshmen were looking at a commitment to living in student housing on campus, either university owned or university affiliated, for both their freshman and sophomore years. And then on the banding down below on the right side in blue, that's the entrance into the Barnes and Noble bookstore. It'll be a 2-story entrance, and then showing in a yellow band extending between 33rd and 32nd Street along Chestnut. You'll see the 11 storefronts, 2 stories of retail, including a couple of restaurants that will double deckers. Coming up as a question, rumor has it that the old Newman Center building will be replaced with a hotel. Can I give a description? I have that coming up in a little bit. Paul Daniel asks, why is the idea of punched windows overpowering all new buildings? I would say that above the 2nd story level, that's probably true. I think the glass curtain wall is stronger down below. One of the remarks that Inga Saffron made that I think is worth paying attention to is that a continuous string of unbroken curtain wall that runs a full block creates a different kind of planning problem. But I think in general, your point is right. And but I would say that we've been better at running curtain wall on the 1st and 2nd levels. And you're right also that the punched window has prevailed above the 2nd level. Now, so this is a pretty good one. I might have one that's pulled back a little farther away. This shows you the massing, and I wanted this slide in here to just show the change in the character along Chestnut Street. Brandywine Realty has a new housing project that's private. It's not Drexel associated, and that's going up at 30th Street in Chestnut. Penn intends to start construction on Hill Field, which would be just to the right of this image on their campus. And there's new housing going up at 38th and Chestnut. So we're going to have a fairly significant mixed-use residential and retail corridor running from the river all the way to 40th Street and along Chestnut Street before too much more time goes by. So this is a great aerial shot. And then I told you a little bit earlier about the changing palette of Drexel, what the campus looks like and how it feels. And you can see here that the addition of Chestnut Square, the Integrated Sciences Building, and the LeBeau Building really changes this from an orange brick ethic. And so now we have a lot of stone in the appearance. And my personal opinion at this point is that we need to start mixing in more glass and maybe some metal panel facade work to really give a complete macro appearance to the campus. But I think most people who have been around here for a while really like the direction of development, and the limestone certainly adds character and kind of institutional solidness to Drexel. In Chestnut Square, we've got some really exciting concepts coming up. I'm looking down at my watch. I have 13 minutes to go, so I've got to make sure that I. Another comment has come up. Yes to more glass and metal. So thank you very much. And I do think it is the right thing to do to get a nice blend of facade materials spread across our entire 65-acre footprint so that it's harmonious. Okay, a question has popped up also about the Corman Center. I'll get to that in a section. I'm sorry I don't have an image about what we're thinking about Corman in the future, but I will make a couple of remarks about that after I get through the retail concepts that are in Chestnut Square. Shake Shack, of course, is all the rage now. We are going to be building out a Shake Shack, and this is an image from their build-out package. And then on the other side, so the Shake Shack would be on the east side of the entrance into the Mandel Courtyard, and then on the west side of the entrance into the Mandel Courtyard is a Zavino, and then up above, on the second level above Zavino, would be a Kozara restaurant. We have a Joe's Coffee coming in. We're going to have a bank. We have signed an art supply store to be in here as a service provider. So the mix is really shaping up. Again, 20,000 square feet of retail here. I'm going to hold off on responding to Corman until I get someplace I've got an image that might include it. Okay, this won't be it. I may end up having to go back, and if I do need to go back, I will. Can anybody tell, does the pointer show up in the image? It probably doesn't. All right, if all of you will direct your attention to the item labeled D, in the little purple D dot says LeBeau College of Business, but right next to it, in the octagonal shape, is Corman. Okay, and so if you can, yeah, okay, Corman. So just a great point has been made. Corman was built in 1956, and that was the first location for the library after it came out of the main building. The library was in the main building on the 32nd Street side originally, up until Corman was built. And it only was retained, for 20 years as a library, and then Haggerty was built 22 years later, and Corman now has the functions in it that it does. It's a very large footprint. That's a 22,000 square foot footprint for a 60,000 square foot building. And I don't know whether I gave you these statistics before, but the LeBeau College building is a 23,000 square foot footprint for 177,500 square feet of space. So, and then right next to Corman on the other side, we've just built 135,000 square feet of the Papadakis Integrated Sciences building. So Corman uses up a lot of real estate for its size. And of course, because it's so big and round and originally was built to house stacks and didn't include those daylighting features that a number of you have referred to, it's just not a very friendly building. We actually do have some preliminary plans. We have some discussions in progress with a potential donor to replace Corman with a new, very large structure that would both be a new Central University library, because the Haggerty is not large enough for the student body we have, and this is the traditional heart of the campus where our undergraduate library belongs, but then also to provide additional classroom and office space, departmental office space, so that we can completely consolidate our College of Arts and Sciences. And if we can do that, if we can get all of Arts and Sciences right inside the heart of the original super block that runs from 31st to 33rd, Chestnut to Market, that'll really be a great thing to accomplish. And so those of you asking questions are exactly right. Corman is the perfect place to accomplish that. It's not detailed as a specific project right now in the master plan, and it would be a very expensive thing to do, as you can imagine. But we're thinking about it, and we'll get it done. All right, so looking at the innovation neighborhood for a minute. So this is, I won't spend a lot of time on these diagrams, but the innovation neighborhood is that area, that 10-acre space between 30th Street and 32nd Street, and then running from roughly Market Street up to the tracks. We own all of that property. It includes the old Bulletin Building and the space that some of you would think of being the parking authority space. That's actually Drexel owned. But what we've started to do now is plot this out in the city's mapping system so that we identify the parcels, identify the public utilities, public easements, and rights of way and other developmental restrictions that we might face as we get ready to put together an RFP to invite developers to propose on the first developments in the innovation neighborhood. Again, to be done with other people's money, to be done as mixed use, which would include university uses along with private uses. Okay, and so I've got a question. When would the first project break ground in the innovation neighborhood? The answer to that is that this summer, the parking authority is actually moving out of the garage that runs along JFK Boulevard, and we're going to be putting the first installment of a Center for Energy Policy, and that will include engineering laboratories and other core research facilities. So that'll all be our first initiative, but that won't be new construction. It will be renovation. And then I would say, in direct answer, for breaking ground on the first project in innovation neighborhood, it's most likely to be one of two places, either on the part of this diagram that's marked 3051, so that's right next to Canaris Hall, and if we built there, it would either be market rate housing or student housing with perhaps with something like a child care center mixed in. The other place that could come first would be next to the Sovereign Bank, that parking lot along Market Street. That would be a great place to start a research and laboratory function that was associated with engineering. So I would say it would be one of those two things. But I put up this image to show you that we're really starting to move ahead now with kind of really planning level things to inform us. Okay, there, 3051 shows up a lot better on the screen. So that's one of the likely ones. And then if the person operating the arrow can point to the corner where the Sovereign Bank is, there you go. So, nope. Go back. Nope. So the Sovereign Bank would be right under that parcel that says 3051, but along Market Street. I guess not very many people pulled out their bank cards. Okay, now you're pointing at Firestone. That's another story. And you're right now, you're right on the corner of University Crossings. That's a different story. There you go. That's the Sovereign Bank. And so then just to the east of the Sovereign Bank would be the parking lot, which is the other likely candidate. Okay, so here's a very good question. What's the story with Firestone? I don't want to be a teaser about this. All I'll say about it is that I think you should stay tuned for some kind of announcement about Firestone very soon, but I should not say anything more about that at this time. But clearly Firestone is the hole in the donut. It's a very important property for Drexel University. It's only a matter of time. The destiny of that property is to become part of the Drexel campus. It's the ideal place in the future for a brand new student union that really picks up where the Crease Center started, but turns us into really a full service student union that's in the heart of the campus, and I think the Firestone site is the perfect location for that. Okay, so now we're coming pretty close to the end. Ooh, I only have 3 minutes, so that I'm going to go pretty quickly right now. 30th Street looking west at the Armory. This is what it looks like today. We have this misty-eyed view of it in the future, and again, we own all the property on both sides of the street, so we're in a position to make this happen. Looking at the way Philadelphia is laid out, the location of the Bulletin Building right now is in a perfect geographic position to be considered the sixth square in Philadelphia that William Penn didn't really conceive of. So I've got a note here on the screen about green space, and can I expand on it? If I have time, I will. I just want to get you through the rest of these slides. We know now that from a study that we can overbuild 5 to 6 stories on the Bulletin Building, so we're going to be hiring an architect pretty soon to do that, and that will also be a project in the innovation neighborhood. Here's what it would look like at night, lit up as a lantern. Has just a great effect on the monumental march of architecture to the west. Chestnut looking west. This is at the old Abbott's Dairy site, the F lot. The point is that it's a great place for a large corporate headquarters. We have made one pitch. It didn't work out, but we're looking at pitching a corporate headquarters that has programs tied to one of our major colleges and employs our co-ops. I was asked earlier about the Intercultural Center, and yes, this is a site for a hotel. Pay no attention to this image. It doesn't really mean anything other than the fact that we're going to put a boutique hotel on the site. Again, announcement coming up about that relatively soon. It'll be about 175 to 190 beds, and we hope to have a proposal to take forward to the Board of Trustees pretty quickly. And again, we should have an announcement about that relatively soon. The intersection of Lancaster and 34th looking west. This was the Lancaster Turnpike, opened in 1795, America's first toll road, and look what we've done to it over the last 200 years. Put a blank engineering laboratory on the left and a very ugly but commercially popular 7-Eleven on the right. And then, of course, Lancaster Pike has suffered ever since. But here's what we intend to do. We're actually going to the Planning Commission this afternoon to talk about the zoning process for making this happen. Our target date for opening this project is September of 2015. It would be a 1,300 bed facility with 20,000 square feet of retail along Lancaster, and here's what the Lancaster view would look like. Got a couple more questions popping up. Again, I'm going to try to get to them. But I have a couple other things to tell you about. This new development would feature a new dining hall, which we desperately need. So this would be a 400-seat dining hall, again, running up 34th Street, which I earlier described as a new food and beverage corridor. Just a couple other things that we're finishing up right now. Nesbitt Hall was emptied out when the College of Media Arts and Design moved to 3501 Market, and we now are renovating it for a September of 2013 opening to move the School of Public Health from Center City out here to West Philadelphia. Stratton Hall is currently being renovated once more, a September of 2013 opening. The idea is to consolidate the psychology department there, which historically has been spread out across 4 buildings. And they'll all be put in there, a forest of vertical sticks. The Armory is coming up. As all of you know, we are in the 4th or 5th year of our lease with the Armory. And the Commonwealth has just gotten some of their planning funds released, so we're going to go forward jointly with a project that will restore the Armory to its original pristine 1916 condition, and that includes restoring all of the windows and replacing the roof. At the same time, the mezzanine space inside the Armory has never been very efficiently used, and we have a project designed to add student recreation space in there on the inside. We have just acquired and are ready to award a construction project now at 35th and Spring Garden. This is a 1.3 acre property with 3 buildings on it at 3509 Spring Garden, and this would become our urban extension center of service programs into the neighborhoods. And again, that award is taking place now. Construction will proceed over the next 18 months. Another image of it. I think I may be near the end. Oh, the Christmas McAllister Courtyard, I described this to you a little bit earlier, but gone is the pyramid, and you see in its place kind of an apple, New York apple style entrance. And this, again, opens in September. So lots of new and exciting things taking place. The Esplanade, which was redone not even 10 years ago, already suffers because all of the walkways are too narrow for the population and the traffic that we now have. The foot traffic at Drexel has more than doubled just in that time. So we have plans to remove particularly those concrete barriers, to open up the walkways, make them larger, and to put an outdoor seating area in the Esplanade that will be capable of taking events as large as 500. A few more images of how the plaza might end up looking. And then I do believe that this is the last set of slides. Historically, Drexel has needed to improve the delivery of service to students who need to deal with issues around registration, their bills, payments, academic advising. And so what we're doing is centralizing all of those services on the first floor of the main building into what's going to be known as Drexel Central. It's a one-stop shop for students to resolve all of their transactional needs, and our goal is to be able to do that within 15 minutes. So I won't use the term from history that we're trying to get away from, but what we're just trying to do is streamline the Drexel experience and remove the negatives for people. So this image shows where that circle is a nice big customer service area for addressing all of these problems. Let me see if I'm okay. I'm at the end, and I'm going to make one comment. Yes, John List, that's the answer to your question is correct. We're trying to do away with what people remember not as fondly about their years at Drexel. But the idea is to improve service. That's what it's all about. Just making a remark about green space and maybe sustainability, and then I'll go. We're really looking at all of the rest of the space that's not enclosed by buildings as being outdoor rooms. And so we want every space, whether it's indoors or outdoors, to be defined and to have a function and a purpose, and therefore to have its use greatly improved. And so the green space really means a lot. Drexel, I don't have the image of it here. I wish I did. The surprising thing is that Drexel has a lot of green space. You just don't think about it because it's not well defined. As time goes by and as we're able to do infill projects that define and shape those spaces, we want to have just as much usable, innovative green outdoor space as we have interior spaces. Okay, there are so many good things popping up. I'm really over my time limit now. And let me just say that anybody with questions, I have a WordPress blog and the title of which is Drexel Master Plan, one word. I have a Facebook page, the title of which is, you guessed it, Drexel Master Plan. All you have to do is friend that. We have a Twitter account called Drexel Plan, so you can get tweeted if you would like. If you go to the university homepage and go on to the master planning page, there are buttons that take you to the WordPress and to the Facebook page. If you have any questions, you can get my email address. It's raf47@ drexel.edu. And those are all ways to get a hold of me. I invite anyone who's listening to send in questions. And even better would be to go onto those social media and send in your questions that way. And that way everyone can have the benefit of the answer. I want to thank you for your time and attentiveness. You've been very kind. I noticed in looking out at the audience that no one fell asleep when I was talking. And so that means a lot to me. And I really appreciate the chance to be able to address alumni. And I hope it just makes you feel a part of it all. It's really happening here. And you know, who is luckier than I am to have a job here at a time like this at Drexel. Okay, so thanks. Signing off, Bob Francis, your Vice President for Facilities.